The story begins not with the roar of triumph, but with the quiet scrape of a broom against a polished marble floor. Isaiah Carter had worked at the sleek downtown office building for nearly 10 years. Every morning before the sun broke through the horizon, he arrived in his faded blue uniform, clutching a dented thermos of black coffee and humming old gospel tunes his grandmother used to sing. At 43, Isaiah carried the quiet dignity of a man who had weathered storms most people never saw. A widower raising his teenage daughter, Layla, he'd taken the janitorial job not because it was glamorous, but because it was steady. It put food on the table. It kept a roof over their heads. His coworkers rarely noticed him. Most passed by without a greeting, as if the mop in his hand erased his presence. But Isaiah didn't mind. "The Lord sees," he'd whisper to himself. "The Lord sees." Still, there was one person who noticed him plenty, though not in the way anyone would want. Martin Greer, regional manager of the firm occupying the top 4 floors, was known for his pressed suits, expensive shoes, and the way he spoke down to those he considered beneath him. And to Martin, no one was beneath him more than Isaiah. "Lazy," he would mutter under his breath whenever he passed. "Man's been here a decade and still pushing a mop. No ambition." Isaiah always kept his head low, refusing to rise to the bait. He had learned that sometimes silence was the only shield. But Martin's disdain wasn't just quiet mutterings anymore. It was becoming public, sharp, and cruel. One Thursday morning, the lobby was buzzing with energy. A group of executives from overseas had flown in, and Martin wanted the place spotless. He barked orders at receptionists, assistants, even security guards, making sure everything looked like a museum display. Isaiah had been up since 4:30, scrubbing every corner of the lobby until the marble floor gleamed like water. By the time employees streamed in, he was already sweaty and sore, but proud of the shine beneath their expensive shoes. That's when Martin spotted him. "Isaiah." Martin's voice cut across the lobby like a whip. The chatter hushed. People turned. Isaiah straightened slowly, mop still in hand. "Yes, sir?" Martin's face was red with irritation. He pointed at a faint streak near the elevator, something no one else would have even noticed. "You call this clean? This is embarrassing. We've got international clients walking through here and you're standing around like you've got all day." Heat rushed to Isaiah's face. He hadn't been standing around. He had been working nonstop since dawn. The streak was just water drying. But Martin wasn't finished. "You've been here 10 years, Isaiah. 10 years. And you still can't get something as basic as this right? Maybe this is why you're still mopping floors instead of doing anything meaningful with your life." A few employees gasped softly. Others looked away, uncomfortable. The silence pressed down like a weight. Isaiah's throat tightened. He wanted to defend himself, to explain, but his voice caught in his chest. He thought of Layla, of the rent due next week, of how much he needed this job. So he swallowed his pride and whispered, "Yes, sir. I'll fix it." Martin smirked, satisfied at the submission, and strutted off toward the conference room. For the rest of the day, Isaiah felt the stares. Some coworkers whispered when he passed by. Others offered awkward sympathy with their eyes but said nothing. He tried to keep working, tried to drown his shame in the steady rhythm of sweeping and scrubbing, but the words clung to him like dirt he couldn't wash away. Lazy. Meaningless. Still mopping floors. That night, when he got home, Layla noticed his silence at dinner. "Dad, what's wrong?" she asked, pushing her plate aside. Isaiah smiled faintly, trying to hide the hurt. "Nothing, baby girl. Just a long day." But Layla wasn't fooled. At 16, she had her mother's sharp eyes. She knew her father carried burdens quietly, but she also knew he was proud of his work. "Don't let them talk down to you, Dad," she said softly. "You do more with honesty and hard work than most of those people ever will." Her words eased him a little, but as he lay in bed that night, staring at the cracked ceiling, he wondered how much longer he could endure Martin's contempt. The following week, the pressure mounted. Martin was on edge, snapping at everyone. The overseas executives were extending their stay, and he wanted everything flawless. Isaiah worked double shifts, skipping breaks, staying late to polish every detail. His hands ached. His back screamed. But he didn't complain. Then, on a rainy Tuesday, it happened. Isaiah was mopping near the front doors when 2 clients walked in, dripping umbrellas in hand. He hurried to clean the puddle they left behind before anyone slipped. Just as he bent down, Martin stormed into the lobby, his voice booming. "There you are. I've been looking for you everywhere." Isaiah stood quickly, mop in hand. "You've got bathrooms on the 12th floor, filthy, trash cans overflowing, and here you are lounging in the lobby again." Isaiah blinked. "Sir, I've been working nonstop." Don't talk back. Martin snapped, cutting him off in front of the clients and half a dozen employees. His voice carried, sharp and merciless. I am sick and tired of your laziness. If you can't handle the most basic responsibilities, maybe you don't deserve to work here at all. The lobby froze. The clients exchanged uncomfortable glances. A security guard shifted awkwardly. Isaiah's heart pounded. This wasn't just humiliation, it was destruction. His job, his income, his dignity, all dangling by a thread. Sir, please, he said quietly, desperation in his tone. You know I've been doing my job. I've given years to this company. Martin's hand sliced through the air. Enough. Go to HR. You're done here. For a long moment, no one moved. Isaiah stood rooted, mop still dripping water onto the marble floor. His chest ached as if the world had caved in. Fired. Just like that. The clients muttered something about stepping outside. Employees looked anywhere but at Isaiah. The security guard avoided his gaze. Martin turned on his heel and marched off, leaving Isaiah standing in the wreckage of his pride. Slowly, painfully, Isaiah leaned the mop against the wall. His hands trembled. He felt hollow, like air had been sucked from his lungs. 10 years of work. 10 years of sweat, early mornings, aching bones, discarded in seconds with a single word, lazy. That night, Isaiah sat at the kitchen table long after Layla had gone to bed. The termination papers lay in front of him, cold and final. His rent was due in 2 weeks. Bills piled on the counter. College applications for Layla sat waiting for fees he didn't know how to pay anymore. He buried his face in his hands. The humiliation at work had been bad enough. But this? Losing his livelihood? The thought of telling Layla made his stomach twist. When she padded into the kitchen, sleepy-eyed in her pajamas, she saw the papers and froze. Dad, what happened? Isaiah's voice cracked. They let me go. For a moment, silence hung heavy. Then Layla crossed the room and wrapped her arms around him. We're going to get through this, she whispered fiercely. I don't know how yet, but we will. Isaiah held her tight, blinking back tears. But deep inside, a storm was brewing. He had been wronged, not just by a cruel boss, but by a system that saw him as invisible, disposable. And though he didn't know it yet, this was only the beginning. Because someone else had seen what happened in that lobby. Someone who wasn't going to let it slide. The silence after injustice can feel louder than the act itself. For Isaiah Carter, that silence followed him everywhere. 2 weeks had never felt so short. Rent day crept closer, bills stacked bricks, and Isaiah's bank account dwindled to fumes. The first few days after being fired, he tried to keep busy. He applied for cleaning jobs at local schools, hospitals, even a hotel downtown. He ironed his only dress shirt for interviews, polished his shoes, and forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. But everywhere he went, rejection waited. We're looking for someone with more recent experience. We'll call you back if a position opens. I'm sorry, we've decided to move forward with another candidate. Each no carved deeper into his spirit. By the second week, he had sold his old record player and a set of tools to make sure Layla had enough for her school lunches. But late one night, as he sat staring at the flickering lamp in their living room, reality hit. If something didn't change, they'd lose the apartment. On Friday, Isaiah went to the neighborhood grocery store, trying to stretch $20 into a week of meals. His cart carried little more than beans, rice, and a loaf of bread when he felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned and saw a woman, maybe in her late 20s, her blonde hair tied in a loose ponytail. She shifted nervously, clutching her phone. Excuse me, you're the janitor from Greer and Company, right? Isaiah frowned. Yes, where I was. Her eyes darted around. I saw what happened. In the lobby that day. When Mr. Greer fired you. Isaiah froze. Heat prickled at the back of his neck. You were there? She nodded quickly. I was visiting a client upstairs. I saw everything. He humiliated you in front of everyone. And it wasn't right. For a moment, Isaiah just stared. He had replayed that scene 100 times in his head, wondering if he'd imagined the cruelty, if maybe he'd overreacted. But here was a stranger confirming it all. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I have the whole thing on video. I recorded it on my phone. Isaiah's eyes widened. You, what? I couldn't just watch and do nothing, she said, her hands trembling. I don't know what you'll do with it, but maybe it can help. She pulled up the file and showed him. The video of Martin's voice booming across the marble lobby, the words lazy and done here echoing while Isaiah stood in silent humiliation. Isaiah's throat tightened. Proof. He wasn't crazy. He wasn't invisible. What's your name? he asked, voice low. Claire, she said softly. Claire Mason. That night, Isaiah sat at the kitchen table again, this time with Claire's video on his phone. He watched it again and again, his jaw tightening each time. Layla came in from her room, her homework in hand. Dad? What's that? He hesitated, then showed her. She gasped as Martin's insults filled the tiny kitchen. Dad, this is proof. You can fight back with this. But Isaiah shook his head. Baby girl, fighting back costs money. Lawyers, court fees. I can't even keep up with the rent right now. Then go public, Layla urged. Show people the truth. Don't let him get away with it. Isaiah sighed heavily. The truth doesn't always set folks like us free. Sometimes it just makes us a bigger target. He wanted to believe otherwise, but years of being overlooked, underestimated, and dismissed had taught him caution. Still, the video burned in his pocket like a hidden flame. 2 days later, Isaiah went to the local community center to drop off some forms for a food assistance program. The lobby smelled faintly of disinfectant and coffee, the walls lined with flyers for job fairs and legal aid. As he waited, a deep voice called out, Isaiah Carter? He turned to see an older man with a neatly trimmed beard and glasses, holding a clipboard. I'm Robert Daniels. I volunteer here, career counseling, tenant rights, that sort of thing. Mind if I sit? Isaiah nodded. They talked, about his years of work, about Martin's cruelty, about the firing. And then Isaiah showed him the video. Robert leaned back, eyes narrowing. Son, do you realize what you have here? This isn't just some bad day at work. This is wrongful termination. Public humiliation. That man violated every standard of workplace dignity. Isaiah rubbed his face. What good is proof if I can't afford to fight? Robert's eyes softened. There are organizations that take cases like this pro bono. You're not as powerless as you think. For the first time in weeks, a flicker of hope stirred in Isaiah's chest. Meanwhile, back at Greer and Company, Martin Greer was congratulating himself. Good riddance, he told an associate in his office. The man was dead weight, always dragging his feet. I'm glad I finally cut him loose. But his smug grin faltered when his assistant, Nora, hesitated at the doorway. Sir. With respect, a few people were uncomfortable with how it happened. In the lobby. In front of clients. Martin waved dismissively. Please. People need to see authority in action. You give an inch, they take a mile. Carter was lazy. End of story. Nora bit her lip, then left quietly. But Martin didn't know that whispers were already spreading. Employees talking in hushed tones, emails exchanged late at night. And somewhere downtown, a video existed that could shatter his carefully constructed reputation. Back in Isaiah's apartment, the pressure grew heavier. Rent was now overdue. The landlord had slipped a notice under the door, bold letters warning of eviction if payment didn't come soon. Isaiah sat on the couch, head in his hands. Layla sat beside him, clutching the eviction notice. Dad, we can't just let this happen, she said, her voice trembling. You've got to fight. You've got proof. Isaiah looked at her, seeing not just a daughter but the reflection of her mother's fierce determination. I'm scared, Layla, he admitted quietly. Scared of losing more than we already have. She placed her hand over his. Then be scared. But fight anyway. For us. His eyes watered. He nodded slowly. A week later, Isaiah sat in a small office at the community center with Robert and Claire. The video played once again, Martin's voice filling the room. Robert leaned forward. With this, we can file a complaint. Not just wrongful termination, hostile work environment, discrimination. If you're willing, I know a firm that will take this on without charging you a dime up front. Isaiah's chest tightened. This was the moment. The crossroads. He glanced at Claire, who nodded encouragement, and at Robert, whose steady gaze offered assurance. Then he thought of Layla waiting at home, trusting him to stand up. All right, he said finally. Let's do it. Robert smiled. Good. Because this isn't just about you, Isaiah. It's about every worker who's been treated like they don't matter. Isaiah exhaled slowly, the weight of decision heavy but righteous. But as he left the center, the cold air biting his skin, a new fear rose in his gut. Martin Greer wasn't the kind of man to back down quietly. And once he learned that Isaiah had evidence, proof strong enough to unravel him, the battle would truly begin. The decision to fight back had been made. But decisions are one thing. Living with them is another. The following week, Isaiah Carter sat in the cramped office of a downtown legal aid firm. The place smelled faintly of paper and old coffee. Stacks of case files towered on desks, while volunteers shuffled in and out with clipboards. Across from him sat attorney Jasmine Wright, a sharp-eyed black woman in her mid-30s, dressed in a navy blazer. She leaned back, arms crossed, studying Isaiah with a mixture of curiosity and determination. "So let me get this straight," she said. "You worked there for nearly 10 years. No disciplinary record. No performance complaints. And then one day, your manager publicly humiliates you and fires you in front of clients." Isaiah nodded. "And you've got this on video?" Jasmine pressed. "Yes, ma'am," Isaiah said, pulling out his phone. He played Claire's recording, the sound of Martin's voice booming through the tiny office. Jasmine's eyes narrowed. When it ended, she sat back slowly. "That's gold. Clear, undeniable evidence. This isn't just wrongful termination. We're looking at defamation, workplace harassment, maybe even racial discrimination depending on his history." Isaiah swallowed hard. The words felt heavy. He had never been in a lawyer's office before, never thought he'd be the kind of man to sue anyone. Jasmine leaned forward, voice firm. "Isaiah, you've been wronged. You've got a case and I'll take it. But you need to know, this won't be easy. Greer and Company has money, connections, and lawyers who'll fight dirty. Once we file, they'll come at you hard." Isaiah thought of Layla, of the eviction notice still taped to their fridge. "I don't have much to lose anymore," he said quietly. Jasmine gave a slow nod. "Then let's do this." The filing didn't stay secret for long. Within a week, whispers spread through the office building. Employees exchanged glances at the water cooler, emails pinged after hours, and the name Carter resurfaced in conversations. Martin Greer slammed his fist on his mahogany desk when his assistant delivered the news. "He's suing me?" Martin barked. "That man couldn't even mop a floor right, and now he thinks he can take me to court?" His assistant, Nora, shifted uncomfortably. "The staff. Some of them say he was treated unfairly. And if there's video?" "There is no video," Martin snapped. "And even if there was, no one would dare use it." But in his gut, unease gnawed at him. At home, Isaiah faced a different kind of battle. Bills kept arriving, red notices screamed for payment, and groceries grew sparse. He picked up odd jobs, painting a neighbor's fence, unloading boxes at a warehouse, but the money was never enough. Layla tried to help, tutoring kids from the building for a few dollars, but Isaiah hated seeing her shoulder burdens she should never carry. One night, as they ate plain rice for dinner, Isaiah confessed his fears. "What if I lose Layla? What if they crush me in court and we end up worse off?" She looked at him steadily. "Then at least you fought, Dad. At least you showed me that when someone tries to strip away your dignity, you don't just bow your head. You stand." Her words sank deep, carving courage where doubt had lived. A few days later, Isaiah noticed something strange. On his walk home from a day of hauling boxes, he spotted a black sedan parked across the street from his apartment. The same car was there the next day and the day after that. When he approached, the car pulled away slowly, its tinted windows hiding the driver. The message was clear. Someone was watching. That night, his phone buzzed with an anonymous text. "Drop the case, Carter. It won't end well for you." Isaiah's stomach churned. He showed the message to Jasmine the next morning. She frowned. "This is intimidation. Classic corporate tactic. Don't let it scare you." If anything, it shows they're worried. But it did scare him. Especially when Layla mentioned seeing a man lingering near their building. The fight was no longer just about pride. It was about safety. One evening, as Isaiah left the community center after meeting Robert, a figure approached him. It was Nora, the assistant from Greer and Company. She glanced around nervously before speaking. "Mr. Carter? I shouldn't be here. If Martin finds out, I could lose my job." Isaiah stiffened. "Then why are you?" Her eyes softened. "Because what he did to you was wrong. And it's not the first time. He's been covering up things for years. Mistreatment of staff, cutting corners with safety, manipulating reports. People are scared to speak out, but I can't stay silent anymore." Isaiah's pulse quickened. "Do you have proof?" She hesitated, then whispered, "I have emails. Documents. If you promise to keep me out of it for now, I can get them to you." Isaiah's breath caught. This was bigger than he thought. "Why are you helping me?" he asked quietly. "Because I've watched good people suffer under him for too long," Nora said. "And because someone has to do the right thing." She slipped him a small envelope and hurried off into the night. Back at his apartment, Isaiah opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside were printed emails, Martin's messages to senior staff. One read, "Cut back the janitorial budget. I don't care how dirty it looks. They're invisible anyway." Another, If Carter complains, fire him. No one will care. He's dead weight. Isaiah's hands shook as he read. This wasn't just about him. This was a pattern, a deliberate strategy of mistreatment. He showed the papers to Jasmine the next day. Her eyes lit up. This is it. This proves intent. With this in the video, we have him cornered. But Isaiah's relief was short-lived. Because when Martin learned documents had leaked, his fury would have no bounds. At Greer & Company, Martin slammed the emails on his desk, face crimson. Find out who gave him this. I want names, I want answers, he roared at his senior staff. Fear rippled through the office. Employees whispered, some considering their own safety. Others quietly prayed Isaiah would win. But Martin wasn't about to let go. He had money, power, and pride on the line. And he was ready to play dirtier than ever. That night, as Isaiah walked home with groceries in hand, he felt the hairs on his neck rise. He turned the corner near his apartment, and froze. The black sedan was back. This time the door opened. A tall man in a dark coat stepped out, his face hidden in shadow. Mr. Carter, the man said in a low voice. We need to talk. For your own good. Isaiah's grip tightened on the grocery bag. His heart thundered. He didn't know if this man was friend or foe, but he knew one thing. The fight was no longer confined to the courtroom. It had spilled into the streets. And the danger was just beginning. The streetlight flickered overhead, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement. Isaiah Carter stood frozen, groceries in hand, staring at the man who had just stepped out of the black sedan. Mr. Carter, the man repeated, his voice low and even. Don't be alarmed. I'm not here to hurt you. Isaiah's jaw tightened. Then why have you been following me? Sitting outside my building like a vulture? The man held up his hands, palms open. Name's Howard Ellis. I used to work at Greer & Company until Martin ruined me the same way he's trying to ruin you. I've been waiting for someone brave enough to fight him. Isaiah narrowed his eyes. How do I know you're not just another one of his tricks? Howard reached into his coat and pulled out a folder. Inside were termination papers, pay stubs, and internal memos. Documents that showed how Martin had orchestrated his firing 5 years ago after Howard reported financial irregularities. He called me lazy too, Howard said bitterly. Told people I was unstable. Destroyed my career. But I kept records. I've been sitting on them, waiting for the right moment. When I heard about you, I knew it was time. Isaiah's pulse quickened. Another ally. Another piece of the puzzle. Over the next week, Isaiah met with Howard, Nora, Claire, and Robert at the community center. What started as a fight for his own dignity was quickly becoming a collective battle. Nora provided more emails, proof that Martin had instructed staff to cut corners on building maintenance, risking employee safety. Claire's video continued to circulate quietly, shared among trusted contacts. And Howard revealed that Martin had been funneling company funds into personal accounts. This is bigger than just wrongful termination, Jasmine, his lawyer, said during one meeting. This is corruption, fraud, workplace abuse. We're looking at a house of cards ready to collapse. Isaiah listened, stunned. He had only wanted his job back, his name cleared. But now it was clear. Martin's empire was rotten from the foundation up. But Martin wasn't blind. At Greer & Company, he paced his office like a caged lion. They're circling me, he muttered to his inner circle. Carter's pulling in others. Traitors. We need to shut this down. One of his lawyers advised, we can bury him in legal fees, drag this out for years. Martin sneered. And in the meantime, he'll keep tarnishing my name. No, I want him destroyed. Personally and publicly. The next morning, a local newspaper ran an article. Disgruntled janitor files frivolous lawsuit against Greer & Company. It painted Isaiah as bitter, lazy, and desperate. Quotes, fabricated or twisted, claimed he had threatened staff and neglected duties. Isaiah read the article at his kitchen table, his hands shaking. Layla slammed her fist on the counter. This is lies. How can they get away with printing this? Isaiah exhaled slowly, the words cutting deeper than he expected. Because they've got money and connections, baby girl. But the truth's still on our side. The smear campaign backfired in small but important ways. Some employees at Greer & Company who knew Isaiah personally reached out quietly, offering to testify to his character. Others slipped anonymous tips to Jasmine's office, detailing Martin's unethical behavior. Even the newspaper began receiving backlash from readers who questioned the one-sided article. Isaiah began to feel the tide shifting, but every step forward seemed to bring new dangers. One night, he returned home to find his front door ajar. Heart pounding, he rushed inside, only to find the apartment ransacked. Papers scattered, drawers pulled out, Layla's room turned upside down. Nothing major was stolen, but the message was clear. We can reach you anytime. Isaiah sank onto the couch, his head in his hands. Layla sat beside him, tears in her eyes. They're trying to scare us, she whispered. Isaiah nodded grimly. Then they're going to learn we're not so easy to break. A week later, Nora called Isaiah in a panic. I can't keep this quiet anymore. Martin's been falsifying safety inspections for years. I have the records, fire code violations, elevator malfunctions he covered up. If this gets out, the company could face serious fines. Maybe worse. Isaiah met her in a dimly lit cafe, where she slid a USB drive across the table. This has everything. Emails, documents, internal reports. But you didn't get this from me. If they trace it back, I'm finished. Isaiah placed his hand over hers. You've done more than enough already. Thank you. Later, when Jasmine reviewed the files, her jaw dropped. This isn't just a lawsuit anymore. This is criminal. He's endangered lives. If we push this to the right people, Martin won't just lose his job, he could lose his freedom. Isaiah sat back, overwhelmed. He had started this journey fighting for his own dignity. Now he carried evidence that could bring down a powerful man. Word came down that the company had agreed to an internal arbitration hearing before the lawsuit proceeded. Martin wanted to prove Isaiah's claims were baseless and shut the case down quickly. For Isaiah, it meant facing the man who had torn his life apart. The night before the hearing, he sat with Layla at the kitchen table. She placed her hand over his. Dad, no matter what happens, I'm proud of you. Didn't stay silent. You showed me what it means to fight for what's right. Isaiah's eyes watered. That's all I needed to hear. The next morning, Isaiah walked into the sleek conference room where the arbitration would take place. Martin was already there, flanked by high-priced lawyers, his smirk sharp and arrogant. Isaiah sat at the opposite table beside Jasmine, his shoulders tense but steady. Nora slipped in quietly at the back. Claire and Howard too. Robert offered a nod of encouragement. The arbitrator entered, calling the room to order. Martin leaned back in his chair, his voice dripping with contempt. This is going to be quick. Carter's accusations are nothing but lies from a bitter man who couldn't do his job. Jasmine rose, her expression calm but fierce. We'll see about that. Because we have evidence. And witnesses. The room buzzed with tension. Isaiah's heart pounded. This was the moment, the truth would finally begin to surface. And Martin Greer had no idea just how much of his empire was about to unravel. The conference room was tense, every cough, every shuffle of paper echoing louder than it should. The arbitration had begun, and Isaiah Carter sat face to face with Martin Greer, the man who had taken his job, his livelihood, and tried to stain his name. The arbitrator, a stern woman with silver hair, opened her file. We are here today to review the termination of Mr. Isaiah Carter from Greer and Company. Both parties will present evidence. I expect civility. Martin's lead attorney, a polished man in a gray suit, stood first. My client acted within his rights. Mr. Carter was chronically negligent, unmotivated, and disruptive. We will show that his dismissal was justified and necessary for the company's operations. Isaiah's fists clenched under the table, but Jasmine gave him a small nod. Wait your turn. When Jasmine rose, her voice carried power. My client was not only wrongfully terminated but publicly humiliated without cause. We will present evidence of bias, harassment, and systemic misconduct within Greer and Company. And when we're done, the truth will speak for itself. Martin leaned forward, affecting confidence. Look, Carter was never a team player. Always dragging his feet. I warned him multiple times. He had no respect for authority. Do you have documentation of these warnings? The arbitrator asked. Martin hesitated, then gestured to his attorney. The lawyer slid a thin folder across the table, typed memos and signed and undated. Jasmine flipped through them, smirking. No signatures. No dates. No acknowledgement from Mr. Carter. These are manufactured. Martin's jaw tightened. Then it was Isaiah's turn. Jasmine stood behind him as he addressed the room. I gave 10 years of my life to that building. I scrubbed floors until my knees ached. I fixed leaks, cleared trash, kept that place running when others wouldn't lift a finger. Not once did I get a warning or complaint. And then one day, in front of strangers, Mr. Greer calls me lazy and fires me on the spot. No dignity. No respect. His voice wavered, but he didn't break. The room was silent, even Martin's lawyers scribbling nervously. One by one, Jasmine called witnesses. First was Claire, who played her video recording. The screen showed Martin's voice booming, "You're lazy, Carter. You're done here," followed by laughter from passing clients. The arbitrator's brows furrowed. "That's compelling." Next was Nora, trembling but resolute. She produced internal emails, "Cut back the janitorial budget. If Carter complains, fire him." Martin's face drained of color. "Those are confidential company emails." "Which you sent," Jasmine countered coolly. Howard Ellis followed, sharing his story of being targeted years earlier. He revealed financial documents Martin had hidden, showing personal enrichment at company expense. The arbitrator leaned forward. "Mr. Greer, this is no longer just about Mr. Carter's termination. These are serious allegations." By midday, Martin's composure cracked. He snapped at Nora, called Howard a liar, and muttered under his breath about ungrateful nobodies. At one point, he leaned across the table toward Isaiah. "You think this makes you a hero? You're nothing. No matter what happens here, you'll go back to being invisible." Isaiah met his eyes, steady. "Not invisible. Not anymore." Just as the hearing seemed to tilt fully in Isaiah's favor, Martin's lawyer pulled a last-minute trick. He slid a document across the table. "Your Honor, we have evidence that Mr. Carter stole cleaning supplies and tools from the company prior to his dismissal." Isaiah's head snapped up. "That's a lie." The lawyer smirked. "We have inventory reports." The arbitrator frowned. "Is this true, Mr. Carter?" Isaiah stammered. He had never stolen anything, but the accusation hung heavy. For the first time that day, doubt crept into the room. Jasmine flipped through the so-called reports, her eyes narrowing. "Interesting. These logs are dated 2 weeks after Mr. Carter was terminated. He couldn't have stolen supplies when he no longer had access." The arbitrator raised an eyebrow. "Is that correct?" Martin's lawyer blanched. Martin shifted in his chair, sweat beading at his temple. Still, the damage had been done. The accusation lingered, muddying the waters. Isaiah left the hearing room during the break, pacing the hallway. "They'll stop at nothing," he muttered. "Even lies." Jasmine placed a hand on his shoulder. "That's how you know they're desperate. We hold steady. We press harder." Howard approached quietly. "There's more. Files I didn't show yet. If we bring them tomorrow, it'll end this once and for all." "What files?" Isaiah asked. Howard's expression darkened. "Proof of financial crimes that go way beyond this company. If they see daylight, Martin won't just lose his job, he'll be facing prison." That night, Isaiah couldn't sleep. Every creak in the apartment made him tense. He thought of Nora risking her career, Howard risking retaliation, Claire risking exposure, all to stand beside him. And then came the knock at his door. 3 sharp raps. Slow. Deliberate. Isaiah froze. Layla peeked from her room, whispering, "Dad? Who is it?" Isaiah approached the door, heart pounding. On the other side, a voice growled low. "Carter. Stop this case or you'll regret it." The knob rattled violently. Isaiah held his breath. The fight for justice had never felt so dangerous. And tomorrow in the hearing, the truth would either set him free or destroy him. The knock at Isaiah's door had faded into silence, but the echo of it lingered all night. He sat awake in the living room chair, clutching a worn Bible, waiting for morning to come. When it did, he knew the day ahead would decide everything. The arbitration resumed in the same glass-walled conference room. The tension was thicker than ever. Journalists had caught wind of the case and hovered outside, whispering rumors of corruption. Isaiah sat tall beside Jasmine, his resolve hardened by the threats. Across from him, Martin Greer looked more frayed than the day before. His tie sat crooked, his jaw tight, eyes darting nervously. The arbitrator cleared her throat. "We will conclude testimony today. Both sides may present final evidence before closing remarks." Martin's attorney adjusted his papers, ready to strike. But Jasmine raised her hand. "Before they proceed, we have new evidence." Howard stepped forward, clutching a brown folder. His voice trembled, but his conviction didn't. "These are financial records I retained when I worked at Greer and Company. They show unauthorized transfers from company accounts to shell companies, accounts linked directly to Mr. Greer." He laid them on the table. The arbitrator flipped through, her eyes widening. "Mr. Greer," she said sharply, "do you have an explanation for these?" Martin's face flushed deep red. "These are stolen documents. Fabricated. This man was a disgruntled employee who fabricated." Jasmine interrupted smoothly. She pulled out a second folder. "Because we subpoenaed the bank records yesterday. They match." A hush fell over the room. Martin shot up from his chair, his voice rising. This is a witch hunt. You're all conspiring against me. Him, her, all of you, nothing but bitter failures trying to tear me down. The arbitrator banged her gavel. Mr. Greer, control yourself. But Martin was unraveling. His once polished smirk was gone, replaced with desperation. His lawyers leaned in, whispering frantically, but he shoved them away. Isaiah watched, a strange calm settling over him. For the first time he saw Martin not as an untouchable boss, but as a man, fallible, broken, undone by his own arrogance. When it came time for closing remarks, Jasmine deferred to Isaiah. He stood, looking around the room, at the arbitrator, at Nora who sat trembling in the back, at Claire clutching her phone, at Howard with weary eyes, at Martin crumbling before him. I didn't ask for this fight, Isaiah began. All I wanted was respect. A fair day's pay for a fair day's work. But when I was fired, humiliated, and called lazy, I realized this wasn't just about me. It was about every worker treated as disposable. Every voice silenced by fear. Every person told they don't matter. Martin Greer tried to take away my dignity. But he didn't succeed. Because dignity isn't his to give or take. It belongs to me. And to every one of us who refuses to stay invisible. He sat down. Silence followed, heavy and profound. The arbitrator reviewed the evidence for what felt like hours. Then she looked up. Mr. Carter, based on the testimony and evidence presented, I find that your termination was wrongful, malicious, and discriminatory. Greer and Company is ordered to compensate you for lost wages, damages for emotional distress, and additional penalties for misconduct. Furthermore, given the financial irregularities, I will be referring this case to federal investigators. Martin's mouth fell open. His lawyers scrambled, but the ruling was final. Isaiah exhaled a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. Layla squeezed his hand tightly. It was over. The fallout was swift. News outlets ran headlines, corporate giant exposed in Janitor's wrongful termination case. Martin was placed on leave, then arrested weeks later as financial crimes came to light. Nora quietly resigned, but with her head held high. Claire's video went viral, sparking discussions on workplace dignity. Howard finally felt vindicated after years of silence. And Isaiah? He received not only financial compensation but also job offers from companies impressed by his resilience. But he turned most of them down. Instead, with Layla's encouragement, he used part of his settlement to start a small cleaning and maintenance company of his own, one that treated its workers with respect. Months later, Isaiah stood in the lobby of a building his company had just secured a contract for. His new crew worked behind him, laughing, joking, moving with pride. Layla snapped a photo on her phone. Your first day as boss, Dad. Isaiah chuckled. Feels strange, but good. Then he grew serious. If I learned anything, it's this. Power doesn't mean stepping on people. It means lifting them up. He looked around at his workers, then back at his daughter. And no one, gets to call us invisible again. In the quiet of the evening, Isaiah walked home with Layla. The city lights glowed, the streets hummed with life. He thought of the journey, the humiliation, the struggle, the threats, the courtroom showdown. And he thought of the victory, not just his but everyone's. Justice hadn't come easily. But it had come. And Isaiah Carter, once a janitor cast aside as lazy, had become living proof that truth, resilience, and dignity could stand taller than any lie. If this story intrigues you, give us a like, subscribe, share, and tell us what you think.